Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lenders who help it grow. Lance, good to see you. Katie,
good to be here.
See you. Mike Rosman, undisclosed location out of Massachusetts, CEO, co-founder of Bowfly. Mike, it's been a while. Welcome.
Great to see you, Bob. Thanks for having me on.
What does Bowfly do?
So for lenders who are on, we are a source of financing opportunities of connecting with small business borrowers. We do a lot within the franchise space. So probably our average small business borrower is a franchisee, more often than not a major national brand. And those franchisors turn to us so that we can help their franchisees get through the process as quickly and painlessly as possible. And lenders turn to us to meet those borrowers they otherwise would not. So we do a lot within SBA, and I know a lot of your listeners are active on the Bowfly marketplace.
Well, let's talk about franchise lending. What is you're on the ground. First of all, what is the appetite for opening franchises, specifically restaurants and hotels in today's environment?
Well, so I'll start with large franchise, and then we'll talk about the given sectors of restaurant and hotels. What we always see, and you guys know this, firsthand from your data, is that you give me a correction of the job market, you give me a slowdown in jobs and increase of layoffs, and franchising is going to grow.
That makes sense.
Different points, people may refer to that as buying yourself a job. In other categories, it's taking control of your destiny. Hey, I got laid off by my last 3 large corporate jobs. I'm tired of it, and I want to get into franchising. What we know is that, franchisees who are part of strong brands are going to be successful more often than not, for sure, and also more often than their independent cohort, right, for an independent business owner. Now, we get into sectors, and, we don't see growth today in full-service restaurants. We don't see growth in hotels today, although, again, those are long span projects. So I think that activity is bubbling out there. But, again, you look at franchise restaurants, brands like, we see brands like Smoothie King growing exceptionally well. Their sales are up, 15, 20% because consumers still want a product. They're tired of cooking for themselves all the time. And you give me a low contact outing like a Smoothie King or a sandwich shop, and I'm going to go get it. And consumers are going to get it. So we're seeing good growth in those areas. But full-service restaurants definitively slowed down. Banks are chilling on it, and consumers are chilling on it.
What percentage of your transactions are financed through SBA?
I'd say today it's north of 85%. Right? So go ahead.
What percentage of your transactions involve 401k rollovers?
So I think that's going to vary over time. Probably on the order of at least 25% will have the principal bring in some equity into that transaction. We will work on some transactions on behalf of our franchisors and just match up that entrepreneur with a rollover provider. So in that case, they're not bringing any debt into the picture. But these entrepreneurs are going to find a way to grow, and if they need more equity, the Rob's product's a great way to do it.
What about veterans? How are they doing in franchising? Are they above the cohort averages, or are they just part of the mix?
Yeah, well, I'll say franchisors love veterans, right? So part of the franchise mentality is following procedures, and no one does that better than veterans. Right. And so they continue to solicit prospective franchisees from the veteran space, and that has never slowed down. And I suspect it's going to accelerate more. Bob, getting back to your question about conventional lending, I think we have seen a tightening of credit with certain lenders, both SBA and conventional. We're seeing some franchisors get a little bit more creative by talking about credit enhancements. Can I, as the franchisor, establish a guarantee support system for a conventional lender that might bring capital flowing? I think we're going to see over the next kind of 6-9 months some more creative activity in the conventional space, which may get more capital flowing.
Very good. Well, I appreciate that update, Mike. I've known you for years, and congratulations on being a great advocate for that space. That's very, very important. Let's see. We've announced our compensation reports. If you have any of these individual jobs. We have a compensation survey for 2020 for that. And our loans failure statistics for franchises, as well as NICS, do very, very well. How are those numbers going to change? Well, first of all, the numbers are going to look great next year because of all the deferrals, right?
Yeah. Well, and even that, just, Uncle Sam's making payments, right? So, or up until recently, in some cases, still the case. So, it's funny, you talk to lenders, how's your portfolio performing? It's performing great. Now that will change, and we're starting to see the beginning of that change happen right now. Then, additional deferments may kick in. I think it's going to be, a little bit of two unique stories or two distinct stories that are being told, Bob. It's I'm growing and my sales are up 30%, and my lender's not going to skip it. My relationship with my lender won't skip a beat, and I'm in distress.
Yeah, very good. Lance, you were going to jump in?
Well, I think that we're going to exactly what Mike said. We've got a lot of borrowers coming off the CARES Act payments, but I saw a news report that, and this is probably something we'll talk about, that the Senate passing up a bill that may extend that. But
now, wait,
whoa,
you're going off script. That's Katie's.
All right, I'm sorry. I'll leave that alone. The point being is when the CARES Act payments in, you will see a tale of two sides. One, small businesses that are in sectors that are doing extremely well and are growing. And then on the other side, there are those business sectors that are struggling. And when the CARES Act payments stop, there's going to be some liquidation activity.
All right. Well, since you brought it up, Katie, what's going on? The Senate introduced what do we call it? The Debt Relief Extension Act. Tell us about that.
Right. So
yeah, Bob, I want to apologize. I want to apologize to Katie for jumping in early.
Yeah, don't step on Katie's report.
No, it's great that you brought it up. Actually, it's what it's going to do is it's going to extend the debt relief payments for SBA 504, 7A, and microloans an additional 5 months. So that's through February 2021. And if this, if nothing happens, then the debt relief ends at the end of this month. But if they pass this, they'll of course get that continued through February.
And the two questions are always, which side introduced this, majority, minority? Does this have bipartisan support? And what is the outlook for passing it through the House and getting it signed into legislation?
Now, they just introduced this. I actually don't know who introduced it. I'll have to get back to you on that one. But I'm thinking it's probably a majority bill based on the way it's written. So far, everything I've heard for pretty much all of the small business things are bipartisan, so I wouldn't be surprised if this is too. I haven't really heard anything against it, so I think it's probably going to have a good chance.
All right, Lance, now I'll let you jump in and comment on it.
I think Rubio had something to do with this, Bob, but I'm not 100% sure. This would be tremendous for those industries like the restaurant, those existing restaurant 7A loans, those existing dry cleaner 7A loans, those existing hospitality 7A loans. It would buy them a little more time to get back to a more normal mode of operation. I have heard speculation that we might see something. This is the first I've seen of this, but I think it'd be a great benefit for a lot of small business categories.
Well, again, my attitude, Mike, I'll let you jump in on this, is the good news is small business support, Main Street support still is bipartisan. I don't see I don't see any congressional speakers come out against it. What do you see happening?
Oh, I think the demand is enormous. I think both parties want to support it. Yeah. Whether leadership lets it get voted on and get through is a different matter. I think we were all, and the four of us spoke about this, months ago. The speed and dexterity that Congress worked to roll out the CARES Act was amazing. And yet here we are kind of finding our old way. Well, let's do a continuing resolution and let's kind of kick the can forward. And, it's hard not to say that there's going to be significant pain felt by small businesses because these actions aren't being they're not letting things go to vote. So I'm optimistic. I think there is bipartisan support, and it would love to see the execution on it.
Yeah. So we're going to follow this closely.
Yeah, I did just double check. It actually was introduced by the Senate minority. So I have seen a lot of talk about it from the majority. So I think there's probably a lot of bipartisan support for things like this.
Yeah, very good. Poll
Well, the
question.
other thing,
Go ahead,
oh, I'm
Lance.
sorry, Bob. The other thing is it's not spending any new money. It's going to use some of the existing CARES Act money.
Yeah.
So I think that gives it a better chance.
Well, there's money left over in the bucket, and they're talking about throwing more money at the problem as well. So what do you think? Do franchise loans perform better than non-franchise loans? And you could throw in 504 in that as well. 2/3 say yes, 1/3 say false. What's the answer, Mike?
The answer is it's true. I think part of the exercise gets to be, well, let me go ahead and compare apples to apples. So you give me a quick service restaurant that's franchised, and it's going to perform better than a quick service restaurant that's non-franchised. You give me a dental loan that's non-franchised next to a quick service restaurant that's franchised, well, then maybe we've got an issue. But I think apples to apples, we see franchise doing much better.
Yeah. And now that doesn't mean mom and pop cannot do well. There are good operators out there. So, but all we're saying is franchise, but they tend to perform better. They do have defaults, but what I agree with you, Mike, I like to see the franchisors are protecting their brand. And if there's a problem, they're going to be aggressive in solving that problem and helping out their franchisees.
Bob, just on that point, what we experienced during PPP, there were franchisors, the actual franchise brand that engaged with us. I spoke to 3 times a day for 4 weeks until all their franchisees secured capital through PPP. An independent business owner, a restaurateur who didn't have a relationship with a bank would have struggled through that process. So that franchisor support is non-trivial.
Great.
Yeah.
What's going on with franchise lending? Is it increasing, decreasing, remaining the same? I guess the comparison would be where we are a year ago, 6 months ago. It really doesn't make any difference. Just what do you see in your pipeline? Increase a third, decrease a fifth. What do you think, Mike?
I think that tracks to where I think it would be. What you're going to see is if I'm comfortable with a franchise brand and I'm a lender, I want to continue to lend into that brand, into that sector. It just so happens I might be pulling out from another sector. So I think we're going to see a lot of shifting, Bob, where in aggregate, my franchise lending remains the same or has gone up, but there's going to be winners and losers. And I think that's going to become a really big story of this next 12 months.
Mike, how much of an expert does the lenders need to become in the ZOR? I always love the franchisor be calling the ZOR and underwriting the ZOR, or can they just treat these as conventional 7A loans?
You want to be mindful, but I think it's giving you an edge by understanding what is the track record. So you go ahead and give me the data that you provide, Bob. You give me Coleman data on the historical default rates. That's a data point I wouldn't have on an independent business owner. I don't need to become expert in knowing that franchisor accordingly. You want to be mindful, but it shouldn't go ahead and overwhelm the underwriting process and the credit process. Now, flip that a little bit, and if I go ahead and take a very highly franchise-centric approach, I can build a big portfolio. And in that case, I probably am far more invested in understanding who the franchisor is and more about management and more about that support system. But it was a single transaction, keep pushing ahead.
Yeah, very good. And finally, we want to ask this question. Do you support extending that debt relief payment for 7A and 504 through 2021? I think the legislation called for February.
It's probably going to be a pretty resounding yes.
Only 92% say yes.
Bob,
Go ahead.
your SBA lenders have not really had a past due list now for 6 months, and I don't suspect anybody wants to deal with one. So, and it's not just that, Bob. There are sectors of the small business community that need this. There's some, if I look in my portfolio, I have some borrowers who got CARES Act payments who really didn't need them. But I have some borrowers who would not be open today
Right.
if it were not for CARES Act payment.
And again, focus on them. Not only would they not be open, they wouldn't have employees. I mean, that's what this is
Yeah.
all about, is keeping people employed. Very much so. What do we got here? Katie, Senate to introduce another bill. I love these names. Emergency Preparedness and Resilient Enterprises. What is that?
So they're
Excuse me. I have a
introducing
slide.
this one soon. This would reauthorize the SBA pre-disaster mitigation pilot program to give small businesses the opportunity to take out low-interest loans for the purpose of proactively implementing mitigation measures to protect their property from future disaster-related damages. And so far, that one was introduced by the majority, but it has a lot of bipartisan support. There's
Great.
signatures on both sides.
Lance, we got a notice today that said, the SBA wants to remind lenders that the loan must be fully dispersed no later than Sunday. I don't know how.
Well, today's the day. Well, the 27th is odd. That CARES Act payments opportunities ended on a Sunday, and typically in federal government, in the life of federal government, if something ends on a Sunday, they usually push to Monday. But in this case, the loan has to be closed and fully dispersed prior to Sunday, which means you're going to be closing the loan today and dispersing the loan today if you want the CARES Act payment.
And and tell us about that. These are all 7A loans. Tell us.
Well, 7A loans, of course, the 504 loans that get the debenture piece that gets the CARES Act payments, that would have had to have been the last September debenture sale. Those will get it. But on 7A loans, there are lenders across America that are rushing to the finish line to try to get deals closed today and dispersed today.
Good. Very good. Thank you for that, Lance. Let's see. Katie, what did this idiot in Boston do? And I'm not talking about Mike Rosman.
Yeah, no, not Mike. So we've already talked about this man once before when he first applied for the $430,000 loans for 3 businesses. They were all restaurants. None of them were open at the beginning of the pandemic. And one of them he had no connection to whatsoever. He didn't own it. He had no interest in it whatsoever. So I'm not sure why he was trying to get a loan for that one either. None of those loans ended up funding. They caught it early on. However, he was caught and was facing several fraud charges, not only for this, but also for faking his identity and faking several of the loan documents that he had to submit. So he was facing those. He was let go on temporary, he had to pay a small fee, and he was going to come back in a couple months for his first hearing, and he ended up in another state. So the court pulls him back in and says, okay, you can't do that. You can't leave the state. They give him a ankle bracelet. Well, a couple weeks later, he cuts off his ankle bracelet and leaves the state again. This time he ends up traveling around several other states, ends up eventually, what state did he end up in? Massachusetts. So he ends up in Massachusetts and decides he's going to fake his own death to try to avoid going to court for this. So he leaves his car parked by the ocean with a suicide note and his car keys in the ignition and leaves, presumably taking on another identity. He has at least 3 that we know of. And eventually they're kind of searching around for a body, can't find one. Eventually they decide, sure, he must still be alive. Eventually the United States Marshal Service finds him in Georgia with California plates and a new ID again. And they, of course, bring him in again. So now he's not only facing fraud charges, but also failing to appear in court.
Yeah, I think the fraud charges probably were minimal on this, but the other ones. Anyway, what people will do. Hey, I know we're running out of time. Let's see. Lance, tell us about your, I'm sorry, go back, Joseph. We're going to announce this next week. Please nominate people in your organization. You feel free to nominate yourself. These are awards. Unfortunately, we always try to do a award in person. That's not going to happen, but we will announce the awards, and then sometime before 2030, we'll have a big luncheon and invite everyone. So those are the categories, and we will get those out. Lance, what are we doing next Wednesday?
Well, we're going to talk about the things you need to know about the new SOP 5010-6. It got released in, kind of a surprising time. We all expected it early this year, and they released it a few weeks ago. I'm going to cover all the critical information you need to know and point out some of the cool features. And I've never said that before, Bob. I've even said on a SOP committee, the word cool feature has never come out of my mouth in relationship to an SOP, but the 5010-6 has cool features.
All right. And they're obviously effective October 1. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Keep up the good work for Main Street.
Thanks,
Lance
Bob.
and Katie, everyone enjoy your weekends. And thank you for joining us for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great weekend.
Have a great weekend.